Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Imagine a quiet office, the hum of computers, a steady drone. A colleague offers you a coffee with a warm, disarming smile, praising your recent work while subtly pointing out a minor flaw just to help you grow. Or picture a late-night text from a loved one, a beautifully crafted apology that somehow leaves you feeling responsible for their initial transgression. These moments feel insignificant, fleeting, a part of the complex tapestry of daily life. But they are not random. They are calculated moves in a game most of us don't even know we are playing. They are whispers of a timeless strategy, a silent, invisible art of control. This is not the grand stage of politics or war, but the intimate battlefield of the everyday. It is the space where ambitions clash, insecurities are weaponized, and wills are broken, often without a single raised voice. The currency in this war is not gold or territory, but your perception, your emotional energy, and your autonomy. We have been taught to believe in the sincerity of words and the goodness of intentions, to see the world as a place of collaboration. But what if that view is a dangerous liability? What if the kindness you receive is not a gift, but an investment? What if the criticism that haunts you is not a truth, but a carefully constructed cage designed to limit your potential and keep you in your place? Here we do not offer a shield, we offer the mind of the strategist. This is not a lesson in morality, nor an encouragement to adopt the cynic's worldview. Instead, it is a masterclass in perception, an initiation into seeing the invisible strings that guide human interaction. To understand the manipulator is not to become one, but to become immune to their influence. The board is set, the pieces are constantly in motion, and whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, you are an active participant. The only question is whether you will be a player, consciously navigating the board, or a pawn, moved and sacrificed by a hidden hand for a purpose that is not your own. To grasp these dynamics, we must travel back in time to the heart of Renaissance Florence, a city of sublime art and savage politics. It is here that we meet Niccolo Machiavelli, a diplomat and political philosopher whose name has become synonymous with cunning and amorality. When he wrote The Prince in 1513, he was not crafting a Bible for tyrants, as many believe. He was a man who had witnessed the brutal machinery of power firsthand. His work was a desperate, pragmatic manual, written for a leader he hoped could unite a fractured and vulnerable Italy. It was not a prescription for what the world should be, but a cold, unflinching diagnosis of what it is. Machiavelli's philosophy is built on a foundation that many find unsettling. The world is not a stage for the drama of good versus evil, but an arena of perpetually competing interests. He did not advocate for cruelty or deception for their own sake. Rather, he observed them as tools used by humanity to achieve its goals, whether noble or base. His work is a mirror reflecting the darker, more calculated aspects of our nature, the parts we prefer to ignore or condemn in others, while failing to recognize in ourselves. He forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that in the calculus of power, good intentions are often a luxury that leads directly to ruin, a vulnerability to be exploited. The first pillar of his doctrine is virtù. This term is not to be confused with modern virtue. In the Machiavellian sense, virtù is a dynamic combination of skill, strategic foresight, personal prowess, and the relentless will to impose one's vision upon the world. It is the quality that allows a leader to anticipate threats, adapt to changing circumstances, and act decisively, even ruthlessly, when required. The modern manipulator, whether a corporate executive or a toxic partner, is a student of virtù. They meticulously study human psychology, master the arts of persuasion and subtle intimidation, and prepare for every contingency, viewing every social interaction as a potential opportunity to advance their position. The second, and equally critical pillar, is fortuna. If virtù is the skill of the player, fortuna is the unpredictable nature of the game itself, the element of luck, chaos, and circumstance that lies beyond any individual's direct control. Machiavelli personified fortune as a tempestuous river, capable of destroying everything in its path with its violent floods. The average person simply hopes the river will remain calm. The strategist, however, the one possessing virtù, does not rely on hope. They accept the river's potential for destruction and spend their time building dams, dikes, and canals, not to stop the river, but to channel its chaotic energy and redirect its immense power to serve their own strategic objectives. Herein lies the most dangerous misconception of all, the belief that one can simply opt out of this game. Many of us operate under the delusion that by remaining kind, passive, and non-confrontational, we place ourselves above the fray, morally superior and therefore safe. This is a fatal error in judgment. In the Machiavellian worldview, there are no spectators on the battlefield. There are only active combatants and casualties. To ignore the rules is not to transcend the game, but to offer yourself as a predictable, easily manipulated piece. Your very refusal to engage in strategic thinking becomes your primary weakness, an open invitation for those who play to win to use your principles against you. The principles laid down by Machiavelli were not confined to the gilded palaces and bloody battlefields of Renaissance Italy. They have evolved, adapted, and now thrive in the modern world, unseen but deeply felt. The prince no longer wears a crown or commands an army with a sword. Today, the prince is a corporate manager who masterfully pits colleagues against each other, a charismatic public figure who builds a following on promises they never intend to keep, or a partner who architects a relationship based on psychological dominance. They do not rule a state, but a carefully selected human territory, your mind. To identify them, we must first understand the sophisticated masks they wear, the modern archetypes of manipulation that walk among us, often disguised as the very people we trust the most. First, we encounter the most insidious of rulers, the victim prince. This manipulator reigns not from a throne of power, but from a cross of self-inflicted martyrdom. Their primary weapon is not force, but the strategic cultivation of pity and guilt in those around them. They frame their desires as desperate needs, their criticisms as expressions of deep hurt, and their failures as the tragic result of others' negligence. By constantly positioning themselves as the wounded party, they create a silent, binding contract of emotional debt with their targets. You find yourself perpetually trying to appease them, to fix their endless stream of problems, to walk on eggshells to avoid hurting them again, never realizing that your servitude is the very foundation of their kingdom. The victim prince's strategy is woven into the very fabric of daily interaction, making it incredibly difficult to detect. It is the friend who consistently experiences a dramatic personal crisis just moments after you share good news, expertly redirecting the emotional spotlight back onto their own tragedy. It is the family member who responds to a reasonable boundary with a wounded sigh and the passive-aggressive lament, "I suppose I'm just too much of a burden." This archetype is a master at weaponizing your own empathy against you. They do not need to raise their voice or make overt demands. They simply present their manufactured suffering, knowing that your instinct to help and your aversion to causing pain will effectively become their chains. Next, we face the charismatic prince, perhaps the most dazzling and therefore the most dangerous of all. This individual does not seize power. They are given it willingly. They rule through an intoxicating blend of charm, flattery, and an almost preternatural ability to reflect your own highest ideals and deepest desires. They envelop you in a bubble of warmth and admiration, making you feel uniquely seen, understood, and chosen. This is the magnetic leader, the inspiring mentor, or the seemingly perfect romantic partner who showers you with intense affection and promises of a shared, glorious future. They create a powerful cult of personality, not through fear, but through a seductive form of devotion, compelling you to lower your defenses and grant them unconditional trust. The charismatic prince is a living embodiment of Machiavelli's advice to appear virtuous, merciful, and sincere, even when acting from a place of pure self-interest. Their reign often begins with a phase of love-bombing, a calculated, overwhelming campaign of attention and adoration designed to create a rapid and powerful bond. In a professional setting, this is the manager who lavishes you with public praise while subtly gathering information to use against you or your colleagues later. Their facade is so compellingly crafted that even when their actions reveal the cold calculation beneath, their followers often rush to their defense, performing complex mental gymnastics to reconcile the idealized image with the disturbing reality. The charm is not a personality trait, it is a strategic tool. In stark contrast stands the authoritarian prince, the most overt and recognizable of the archetypes. This ruler scorns the subtle arts of seduction and pity, preferring the blunt instrument of fear. They operate on the Machiavellian principle that it is safer to be feared than to be loved. Their dominance is maintained through a consistent strategy of intimidation, overt criticism, the control of essential resources like finances or career opportunities, and calculated displays of anger. They foster an environment of instability and anxiety, a psychological landscape where challenging their authority is unthinkable. Their power is not based on respect or admiration, but on the raw, primal fear of consequences, ensuring compliance by systematically dismantling the self-worth and courage of their subjects. The tactics of the authoritarian prince are not hidden. they are displayed as a warning. This is the parent who governs the household through unpredictable rage and the constant threat of withdrawing love and support. It is the boss who publicly berates an employee for a minor mistake, using personal humiliation as a tool to terrorize the entire team into submission. In an intimate relationship, they might control every financial decision, dictate their partner's social life, and isolate them from friends and family who could offer an outside perspective. They do not seek to be understood or liked. They demand to be obeyed. For them, control is not a means to an end. It is the end itself, the ultimate affirmation of their superiority. Finally, we meet the intellectual prince, who wields logic and reason as a cudgel. This manipulator establishes dominance by making you feel intellectually inferior. They employ complex jargon, circular reasoning, and an endless barrage of facts and data to systematically dismantle your arguments and invalidate your feelings. They position themselves as the calm, rational adult in any discussion, while framing you as overly emotional, hysterical, or simply not intelligent enough to grasp the situation. But here lies the crucial, disquieting revelation. These archetypes are not rigid categories. A single skilled manipulator does not choose one mask, but wears them all, switching between them with breathtaking agility. The charismatic lover becomes the piteous victim when you pull away, and the victim becomes the cold intellectual when you try to explain your feelings. This is the moment of dreadful clarity, the realization that the manipulator is not a distant monster, but potentially someone close, someone who uses the sacred currency of your trust as their primary weapon. To truly understand the modern prince, we must move beyond identifying their archetypes and begin dissecting their methods. Behind the chosen mask, be it the victim, the charmer, the tyrant, or the intellectual, lies a shared and sophisticated arsenal of psychological weaponry. These are not the overt instruments of physical conflict, but the silent, invisible tools of mental and emotional warfare. They are designed with a single purpose: to systematically dismantle an individual's sense of reality, erode their self-worth, and sever their connections to the outside world. This is the craft of deconstruction, the subtle art of taking a person apart from the inside out, piece by piece, until nothing remains but a hollow dependency on the architect of their ruin. The most corrosive of these weapons is gaslighting. The term originates from the 1944 film Gaslight, in which a husband methodically manipulates his wife into believing she is losing her mind. In practice, it is the strategic denial of reality itself. The manipulator will contest your memories, question your perceptions, and challenge your sanity to such a degree that you begin to fundamentally distrust your own mind. It is an assault on the very foundation of your consciousness. The ultimate goal of the gaslighter is not merely to win an argument, but to erase your reality and replace it with their own, creating a state of complete psychological dependency where you rely on them to tell you what is real, what you are feeling, and who you are. This insidious tactic manifests in deceptively simple phrases that, through relentless repetition, become devastatingly effective. It is the flat denial that never happened, spoken with such conviction that you question your own memory of the event. It is the patronizing dismissal, "You're being far too sensitive," which reframes your valid emotional reaction as a personal failing. It is the constant accusation, "You're misunderstanding me again," that plants the seed of your own intellectual inadequacy. Over time, this drip of psychological poison erodes your confidence, making you believe you are unreliable, irrational, and emotionally unstable. You become your own jailer, trapped within a prison of self-doubt built by another's design. Next in the arsenal is triangulation, the art of ruling through division. The manipulator introduces a third element into a dynamic to create insecurity, jealousy, and conflict. This third point of the triangle can be an ex-partner, a favored colleague, a sibling, or even a fabricated group of people who supposedly share the manipulator's negative opinion of you. By positioning themselves as the central hub of communication and affection, they control the narrative and force their targets into a state of competition. You are no longer in a direct relationship. You are an applicant, constantly vying for a position that is perpetually threatened by an external rival, real or imagined, keeping you perpetually off balance. In a professional environment, triangulation is the manager who casually remarks, "It's interesting, the rest of the team managed to finish this task without any complaints," instantly isolating you and framing you as the problem. In a romantic context, it is the partner who relentlessly praises an ex-lover's qualities, subtly highlighting your perceived deficiencies and forcing you into a shadow competition you can never win. The parent who pits siblings against each other with the phrase, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" imposter is also employing this tactic. The strategic function is clear. It shatters alliances, prevents solidarity between potential victims, and reinforces the manipulator's position as the sole dispenser of validation and worth. Another powerful tool is projection, the act of outsourcing one's own darkness. Psychologically, projection is a defense mechanism where an individual attributes their own undesirable traits and feelings to someone else. The manipulative prince, however, wields it as a conscious and strategic offensive weapon. They take all their own flaws, their dishonesty, their infidelity, their cruelty, their incompetence, and paint them onto their target. This serves a dual purpose. It absolves them of any guilt or responsibility for their own behavior, while simultaneously putting their victim on the defensive, forcing them to refute accusations that are, in fact, confessions. It is a form of psychological alchemy that turns their shame into your burden. You see this in the chronically unfaithful partner who is obsessively jealous and accusatory, constantly monitoring your every move. It's the lazy and unproductive employee who accuses their diligent colleagues of making them look bad or not being collaborative enough. Projection is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for the manipulator. After a fit of rage, they will calmly state, "You made me do that. You know how to push my buttons." You are left reeling, not only from the initial attack but also from the crushing weight of the blame, forced to defend your character against a phantom that is, in reality, the reflection of your accuser. To ensure these tactics are maximally effective, the manipulator must employ social isolation. A target with a strong support network of friends, family, and colleagues is a threat. These people can offer objective perspectives, validate the victim's feelings, and expose the manipulator's game. Therefore, a primary objective is to strategically and systematically sever these connections. This is rarely done through direct prohibition, but through a far more subtle campaign of attrition. The manipulator will sow seeds of discord, subtly criticizing your loved ones, manufacturing drama around social gatherings, or simply demanding so much of your time and emotional energy that you have nothing left to give to anyone else. This process of isolation begins with seemingly innocent remarks like, "I just don't think your friend is a very good influence on you," or "Your family has never really liked me, have they?" These comments are designed to create a sense of us against the world, a toxic loyalty that frames outsiders as threats. It escalates to monopolizing your time, creating a crisis whenever you plan to go out, until it becomes emotionally easier to just stay home with them. Before you know it, your world has shrunk. Your sounding boards are gone. The manipulator is no longer just a person in your life. They have become your entire life, the sole arbiter of your reality, leaving you trapped and utterly alone. Finally, we arrive at the engine that powers the entire system, the vicious cycle of idealization and devaluation. This begins with the intense love bombing seen in the charismatic archetype, a period of overwhelming affection, attention, and flattery that forges a powerful chemical and emotional bond. You feel you have found your soulmate, the one person who truly understands you. Then, once you are hooked, the devaluation phase begins. Suddenly, the adoration turns to criticism, the warmth to cold indifference. You are punished for minor infractions, real or imagined. This abrupt shift creates a desperate cognitive dissonance. Desperate to regain the intoxicating high of the idealization phase, you will do almost anything to win back their approval. This is the moment of devastating epiphany. The realization that the emotional chaos you endured was not the symptom of a complex, passionate relationship. It was a calculated, clinical strategy of control. It was not your fault. It was a design. Now, having journeyed through the shadows of the manipulator's mind and dissected their arsenal, we do not retreat, we advance. This is the turning point, the moment we shift from analysis to action, from diagnosis to a cure. This is the art of counterpolitics. But let this be clear, this is not a manual for revenge nor a guide to becoming that which we despise. It is a playbook for the reclamation of your own sovereignty. To navigate this treacherous terrain, Machiavelli advised that a prince must embody two creatures, the fox to recognize the traps, and the lion to frighten away the wolves. Here, you will learn to cultivate the fox's cunning and the lion's strength, not to rule others, but to ensure that you are never again ruled. The foundation of this entire strategy, the bedrock upon which all other defenses are built, is emotional detachment. The manipulator's entire enterprise is fueled by your reactions. Your anger gives them a sense of power, your guilt gives them leverage, your tears give them satisfaction, and your fear gives them control. To neutralize their influence, you must first cut off this supply. This does not mean becoming a cold, unfeeling automaton. It means making a conscious, strategic choice not to perform your emotions for them. It is the quiet internal rebellion of refusing to let their provocations dictate your emotional state. This is the first, most critical step in reclaiming your power, for you are seizing control of the one territory they can never conquer without your explicit permission, your own mind. From this state of detachment, we deploy the first tactic, the grey rock method. Imagine a field filled with interesting, colorful, and vibrant stones. Then, imagine a single, plain, grey rock. Which one do you think a person would pick up? The manipulator is always searching for the interesting stones, the ones that react, that shine, that can be shaped or broken. The grey rock method is the art of becoming profoundly uninteresting. When they provoke you with insults or baiting questions, you provide dull, factual answers. When they unleash a storm of drama, you offer no emotional engagement. You become a void where their psychological venom is neutralized, a boring and unsatisfying target. In practice, this method requires a disciplined and deliberate performance of disinterest. When they attempt to draw you into an argument with a loaded question like, "So you clearly don't care about my feelings at all, do you?" You do not defend yourself. You respond with a calm and brief, "I can see you feel that way." When they recount a dramatic story designed to elicit a strong reaction, you offer a simple, "I understand." Your communication becomes stripped of the emotional data they feast upon. This is not the passive-aggressive silence of stonewalling. It is the active, strategic denial of narcissistic supply. The manipulator, like an actor playing to an empty theater, will eventually grow weary of the performance and seek an audience that gives them the applause of a reaction. Parallel to this, you begin to build your fortress of truth through documentation. A manipulator's power thrives in the fog of ambiguity, in the murky realm of he said, she said, where they can bend reality at will. Your most potent defense is an unwavering, objective record of the facts. This involves meticulously saving emails, screenshots of text messages, and keeping a private, dated journal of interactions. Note the specifics, the time, the place, what was said, and how it made you feel. This is not about gathering evidence for a future confrontation. It is about creating an unshakable anchor for your own sanity, a private testament to the truth. The true power of this record is internal. When the gaslighter looks you in the eye and says with absolute certainty, "I never said that, you're losing your mind," you will no longer need to argue or spiral into self-doubt. You can retreat to the safety of your private log and reaffirm what you know to be true. This documented timeline becomes your external hard drive of memory, a steadfast witness that cannot be intimidated or confused. It is the ultimate tool for self-validation, a constant, quiet reassurance that you are not crazy, that your perception is valid, and that what you experienced was in fact real. This practice alone can be the antidote to years of psychological poison. Now, we unleash the lion. With your mind anchored in reality, you begin to establish and enforce inflexible boundaries. A boundary is not a polite request. It is a firm declaration of your non-negotiables. It is a line drawn not for the manipulator to respect, but for you to defend at all costs. Manipulators are masters of the slow erosion of boundaries, constantly testing your limits with small infractions until none are left. Therefore, the strength of a boundary lies not merely in its declaration, but in your unwavering commitment to the consequence you attach to its violation. It is the moment you stop asking for respect and start commanding it through your actions. The anatomy of an effective boundary is critical. It must be clear, concise, and crucially, it must be about your behavior, not theirs. The weak boundary sounds like, "You have to stop insulting my intelligence." The manipulator will simply argue about the definition of insult. A powerful boundary sounds like, "If you speak to me in that tone, I will end this conversation immediately." The focus is on the action you will take, which you have absolute control over. This fundamentally shifts the dynamic. You are no longer a petitioner asking for better treatment. You are a sovereign state, defining its own terms of engagement. This requires a new language, the language of assertiveness. It is the healthy midpoint between passivity, where you allow your rights to be violated, and aggression, where you violate the rights of others. Assertive communication is the clear, calm, and respectful expression of your thoughts, needs, and boundaries without excessive apology or justification. It is centered on I statements, which claim ownership of your feelings without placing blame. Instead of, "You're making me feel guilty," you say, "I feel a sense of pressure when you say that." It is the dialect of self-respect, a way of speaking that is both gentle and unbreakable. With these tools, you can learn the fox's art of subtly exposing the game without resorting to direct and often futile accusations. When the manipulator employs triangulation by saying, "Everyone at the office thinks you're being too difficult," you can respond assertively and redirect with, "I appreciate the feedback, but I will focus on the official review process for my performance. Choicely, when they project their own laziness onto you, you can state, "That is not my experience of the situation." These statements are powerful because they do not engage the manipulator's frame. They calmly dismantle it, reasserting your own reality and demonstrating that their tactics are no longer effective. Finally, you must be prepared for the inevitable backlash. As you begin to change the rules of the game, becoming a grey rock, setting boundaries and communicating assertively, the manipulator will not simply capitulate. They will perceive your empowerment as a profound narcissistic injury and will likely escalate their tactics in a desperate bid to regain control. This is known as an extinction burst. The charmer may become overwhelmingly charming again. The victim may manufacture their greatest crisis yet. The authoritarian may unleash their deepest rage. This is their final desperate offensive. Recognizing this storm for what it is, a testament to your success, is the key to weathering it without surrender. This is the moment. The fog of war, which for so long has clouded your perception and exhausted your spirit, finally begins to lift. The knowledge you have gathered is no longer a collection of abstract concepts or a chilling analysis of a distant other. It coalesces into a powerful lens, and when you look through it, the chaotic, painful fragments of your own past snap into focus with terrifying clarity. The seemingly random acts of cruelty, the confusing cycles of affection and withdrawal, the arguments that left you questioning your own mind, you now see them not as failures of love or communication, but as a coherent, deliberate and strategic campaign. Every move, every word had a purpose. It was never about you. It was always about control. And then comes the final shattering revelation, the one that changes the very nature of the game. The manipulator's power was never truly their own. It was a phantom, a terrifying illusion built piece by piece from your own best qualities. Their strength was forged from your empathy. Their leverage was derived from your self-doubt. Their confidence was fed by your hope that things would get better. They were a puppeteer with no power of their own, animated entirely by the strings attached to your heart and mind. Now, as you learn to still your reactions, to observe without absorbing, you are doing more than just defending yourself. With every provocation you refuse to answer, you are cutting a string. Observe what happens to the prince when his strings are cut. The strategist whose playbook has been read aloud is rendered impotent. The charmer whose flattery is met with polite indifference is just a person speaking empty words. The tyrant whose rage is met with a calm, unwavering boundary is just a child having a tantrum. The gaslighter who is met with the quiet certainty of a documented reality is left arguing with themselves. This is the profound truth of counterpolitics. The ultimate victory lies not in overpowering your opponent, but in making them utterly and completely irrelevant. You disarm them by taking away the one thing their power depends on: your engagement. This is where the true transformation occurs, deep within you. It is not a loud or violent uprising, but a silent, seismic shift in your inner world. The ever-present fear that once governed your decisions, that made you walk on eggshells and shrink yourself to avoid conflict, begins to recede. It is replaced by a solid, quiet strength you never knew you possessed. The manufactured guilt, that heavy cloak you were forced to wear for so long, simply dissolves under the light of understanding. You are no longer a piece being moved in a game you don't comprehend. You are a player, seeing the entire board, understanding the rules, and for the first time choosing your own moves. Here you discover the ultimate paradox of power. The manipulator is a slave to their own game, trapped in a relentless, exhausting cycle of needing to control, to dominate, to win. Their life is a perpetual state of war. True power, you now realize, is the freedom to not play. It is the quiet confidence to walk away from the board altogether when it no longer serves you. Your peace becomes an impenetrable fortress. Your self-possession becomes your crown. In refusing to fight on their terms, you achieve a victory they can never comprehend, for they are fighting for control over you, while you have achieved control over yourself. This newfound clarity permanently alters your perception of the world. You begin to see the subtle currents of these same dynamics everywhere, in advertising, in political rhetoric, in workplace meetings. But this does not lead to a life of paranoia and suspicion. Instead, it leads to a profound sense of discernment. You are now able to recognize and appreciate genuine kindness, authentic vulnerability, and sincere connection more deeply than ever before, because you can finally distinguish the real thing from its predatory imitation. You navigate the world with an open heart, but it is a heart protected by an unbreakable core of wisdom and awareness. The climax resolves not with a bang, but with a quiet sense of peace. The manipulator is no longer the monster haunting your thoughts. They have been demystified, reduced to a set of predictable patterns and neutralized tactics. The immense emotional weight they once held over you is gone, and in its place there is a vast, calm emptiness waiting to be filled with your own purpose. You are no longer defined by the psychological wars you were forced to endure. The battle is over, not because you struck a final decisive blow, but because you simply walked off the battlefield, taking the only prize that ever mattered, your own sovereign self, with you. The war is over. You now stand not amidst the ruins of a battlefield, but on the solid, quiet ground of your own reclaimed territory. The ultimate purpose of understanding the mind of Machiavelli was never to populate the world with more princes, but to systematically dismantle their thrones. It is to cultivate a state of such profound self-governance and inner peace that the desperate attempts of others to control your reality become nothing more than irrelevant noise. The silence that follows the departure of a manipulator from your life is not a void. It is the sacred, beautiful sound of your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your own intuition returning home. Herein lies the final uncomfortable truth. Genuine, resilient freedom is not born from a naive faith in the inherent goodness of humanity. It is forged in the crucible of unflinching awareness, in the courageous examination of our nature's darkest potentials. To have studied the cold calculus of the prince is not to have surrendered to cynicism, but to have mastered it, so that it may never again master you. It is the profound wisdom that comes from knowing exactly where the shadows lie, a knowledge that allows you to walk toward the light with your eyes wide open, no longer a potential victim, but a conscious and protected navigator of the human landscape. This knowledge, however, comes with a burden. Seeing the board with this newfound clarity can, at times, feel like a lonely vantage point. You will begin to recognize the subtle moves and silent strategies being deployed in the lives of those you care about, who may remain entirely unaware of the game being played against them. There will be a temptation to become a crusader, to unmask every manipulator, to fight battles that are not your own. But here, too, lies a Machiavellian lesson. A wise ruler knows the limits of their power and chooses their interventions with precision. Your primary responsibility is to the security and integrity of your own sovereign state. And now, with this security established, the most important chapter begins. Consider the immense reserves of mental and emotional energy you will now possess, energy that was once consumed by analyzing confusing behavior, defending your reality, and recovering from psychological assaults. That energy is now yours to command. You can redirect it away from the exhausting task of survival and toward the joyful act of creation. You are finally free to build the relationships, the career, and the life that are in true alignment with your authentic self, knowing that the foundation you build upon is now and will forever be unshakable. The journey from pawn to player is now complete. You have descended into the abyss of power dynamics and have emerged not corrupted, but illuminated. You have traded the fragile vulnerability of the piece for the enduring wisdom of the strategist. The final question, therefore, is no longer about them. It's no longer about how to win their petty games or how to defeat them on their own terms. That is a distraction. The only question that matters now is the one you will carry forward, a quiet mantra of your own liberation. Now that you know the game, how will you ensure that no one ever gets to play you again?